The sprawling mansion perched on the hills of Los Angeles was a testament to Elon Musk's genius, ambition, and relentless drive. Its vast, sunlit rooms and sleek modern design symbolized success to the outside world. Yet, to Elon, the house felt like an enormous tomb. No amount of innovation, no groundbreaking invention could fill the void left behind when his daughter, Clara, disappeared 3 years ago. He sat alone in his study, a glass of untouched scotch on the desk before him, staring at the blinking cursor on his laptop. A blank email addressed to no one. It had become a peculiar habit of his, to sit and type messages he would never send. Sometimes to Clara, sometimes to himself, sometimes to the universe, demanding answers it refused to give. The silence was unbearable. He stood abruptly, pushing back his chair so forcefully that it scraped the hardwood floor with a piercing screech. Without thinking, he made his way down the hallway to the room he avoided most days. Clara's room. The door creaked open as he pushed it with a hesitant hand, the air inside carrying the faint scent of lavender that still lingered from the day she vanished. He stepped inside, as if intruding on a sacred space, his footsteps soft, careful. The room was frozen in time, an unintentional museum to her memory. Her bed was neatly made, with its pink rocket-pattern blanket tucked just as she liked. The little desk by the window held her crayons, some worn down to nubs, lying scattered on a half-finished drawing of a spaceship. Her backpack, a purple one with glittering stars, hung limply on the back of her chair. Elon's gaze fell to the corner of the room where the old brown teddy bear rested on a small chair. Its fur was worn in places, the bow around its neck slightly frayed. Clara had named it Captain Bear. He remembered how she'd carried it everywhere, even on the fateful day she vanished. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed, his hands resting on his knees as he stared at the bear. The pang in his chest was sharp, unrelenting. He leaned forward and picked it up, its soft texture igniting an ache in his chest that was almost unbearable. The memories came rushing back in fragments. Her laughter as they played hide and seek, the way she'd lean against his arm while he read to her, her squeal of excitement when she showed him her latest crayon masterpiece. The bear had been in her arms that day at the park. How could it not have been? She never went anywhere without it. He had spent hours combing through security footage, analyzing data, retracing their steps. One moment, she was there, holding the bear, running ahead on the grass. The next, she was gone. Gone. Clara, he whispered hoarsely, gripping the bear tightly, his knuckles widening. Where are you, sweetheart? Why can't I find you? His phone buzzed in his pocket, jarring him from his thoughts. He ignored it. He'd been ignoring everything lately, meetings, interviews, launches. What was the point of building rockets to Mars if he couldn't even bring his daughter home? There was a knock at the door, soft but insistent. He sighed, reluctant to leave the sanctuary of her room. Mr. Musk. Marianne's voice called from the hallway. I'm sorry to bother you, but the board meeting is starting. They're waiting for you. Elon looked at the teddy bear in his hands, as if it held the answer. Then he placed it gently back on the chair and stood. He walked to the door, opening it to find Marianne standing there, her clipboard clutched to her chest. I'm not going, he said flatly, brushing past her. He ignored the look of concern that flickered across her face. She didn't argue. Nobody argued with him anymore. They all knew it was futile. He descended the grand staircase, his footsteps echoing in the vast, empty house. Every corner of the mansion reminded him of what was missing. The laughter that used to fill these halls was gone, replaced by an oppressive stillness that followed him everywhere. He stepped outside into the courtyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. For a moment, he stood there, staring at the horizon. A faint breeze rustled the trees, carrying with it the sound of distant children playing in the park nearby. It was a cruel reminder of the life he had lost. Clenching his fists, he turned and walked back inside. He had everything the world envied: wealth, power, fame. But none of it mattered. He would give it all up, every cent, every invention, every ounce of his influence, just to have Clara back. And yet, as he returned to his study and sat down in a leather chair, he realized he didn't even know if she was still alive. That thought, the uncertainty, was the most excruciating part of all. The photo on his desk caught his eye, Clara's wide smile as she hugged the bear to her chest. He reached for it, his hand lingering on the frame as tears welled in his eyes. He swore silently, for the 1,000th time, that he wouldn't stop searching. Not until he had answers. Not until he found her or the truth. Somewhere out there, Clara was waiting. She had to be. The meeting room was a cacophony of voices as executives debated quarterly projections, but Elon's mind was elsewhere. He stared blankly at the screen in front of him, the graphs and charts blending into a blur. Words like expansion, profit margins, and market share buzzed around him, meaningless noise. Finally, he'd had enough. Without a word, he rose and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Marianne caught up with him in the hallway, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Elon, you can't just leave," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I just did," he replied, his tone clipped. "Cancel the rest of my schedule. I need some air." He didn't wait for her response as he strode toward the elevator, ignoring the curious glances of employees. Minutes later, he was in his car, driving aimlessly through the city. The luxury vehicle hummed quietly as it navigated the winding streets, but Elon hardly noticed. His hands gripped the wheel tightly, his thoughts spiraling. He found himself pulling into the parking lot of a small public park, the kind he used to take Clara to on weekends. It was quieter now, the midday crowd thinning as parents ushered their children home for lunch. The sight of a playground in the distance made his chest tighten, but he pushed the feeling aside and stepped out of the car. Walking along the paved path, he tried to clear his mind. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their rustling leaves providing a soothing backdrop. He passed a couple sitting on a bench, their toddler giggling as he toddled between them. A pang of longing struck him, sharp and sudden. He quickened his pace, needing to move, needing to escape the memories that clung to him like a shadow. Then he saw her, a little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, sitting alone on the edge of the grass. Her clothes were mismatched and slightly too big, her feet bare and dirt-streaked. But it wasn't her appearance that made Elon stop in his tracks. It was the teddy bear clutched tightly in her small arms. It was brown, scruffy, with a bow around its neck. The details were burned into his memory, as familiar as his own reflection. His heart began to race, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But it was unmistakable. The girl turned her head slightly, her gaze distant and wary, as if sensing his presence. Elon took a tentative step forward, his voice catching in his throat. "Hi there," he said softly, trying not to startle her. The girl stiffened but didn't run. She hugged the bear closer, her small fingers gripping it protectively. "What's your name?" Elon asked, crouching a few feet away to appear less intimidating. The girl didn't answer. Her eyes darted around nervously, scanning the park as if she expected someone, or something, to appear. "That's a nice bear you've got there," he continued, his voice gentle but tinged with urgency. "Where did you get it?" For a moment, she said nothing. Then, in a small, hesitant voice, she murmured, "It's mine." Elon's chest tightened. The bear couldn't be hers. He knew it wasn't. "It's a very special bear," he said carefully. "Did someone give it to you?" The girl shook her head, her grip tightening. "It's mine," she repeated, more firmly this time. A chill ran down Elon's spine. The bear was worn, just as it had been the last time he saw it in Clara's arms. But how could this child have it? Where had she come from? "Are you here with someone?" he asked, glancing around. The park was nearly empty, save for a few distant figures. The girl's expression darkened. She lowered her head and muttered something under her breath, so softly he almost missed it. "What was that?" he pressed gently. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "The bad lady." Elon felt his pulse quicken. "Who's the bad lady?" The girl's gaze darted to the trees beyond the park, her body tense as if ready to bolt. "I don't know," she said, shrinking into herself. "She'll be mad if she finds me." The cryptic response sent a wave of unease through him. Whoever this child was, she was scared, and she was holding Clara's bear. "Hey," Elon said, keeping his tone calm. "You're safe here, okay? No one's going to hurt you." The girl didn't respond. She simply clung to the bear, her small hands trembling. Elon's mind raced. He couldn't leave her here. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. And that bear, it wasn't a coincidence. He had spent years chasing shadows, following false leads, hoping for anything that might bring him closer to Clara. Now, for the first time in 3 years, he felt a glimmer of something he hadn't dared to feel in a long time. Hope. Elon crouched lower, his heart pounding as he tried to appear non-threatening. The little girl, her bare feet tucked beneath her, was like a skittish animal ready to flee at the slightest provocation. Her grip on the bear was vice-like, as though it was her only anchor to safety. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked softly, his voice as calm as he could make it. The girl hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. She glanced at the nearby trees, her gaze darting between the shadows as though expecting someone to emerge. After a long pause, she finally muttered, "Anna?" Elon nodded, repeating the name in his head. Anna. It felt real, but her hesitation made him wonder if it was even her real name. "Hi, Anna. I'm Elon." Her eyes flicked to his briefly before returning to the bear. "Hi," she said in a voice so faint he barely heard it. "Are you here alone?" he asked, glancing around the park again. No one seemed to be watching, and no one appeared to be looking for her. "Is someone taking care of you?" Anna didn't answer. She only hugged the bear closer, burying her face in its fur. "Okay," Elon said, keeping his tone gentle. "It's okay if you don't want to talk right now, but I want to help you. You look like you've been through a lot." At that, her eyes lifted to his, wide and filled with fear. "No one can help," she whispered. Elon felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He could see it in her eyes, the kind of fear that no child should ever have to bear. Whoever she was running from, whoever this bad lady was, had left a mark on her that he couldn't ignore. He tried a different approach, gesturing to the bear in her arms. "That's a special bear you've got there," he said, his voice light. "My daughter used to have one just like it. She loved it more than anything." Anna flinched, pulling the bear closer. "It's mine," she said defensively, her voice trembling. "I'm sure it is," Elon replied, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I'm not trying to take it from you. I noticed it looks like one I've seen before. Do you know where you got it?" Anna shook her head quickly. "I found it," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It was in a room, a locked room. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I needed it. It called me." Elon's blood ran cold. "Called you?" he repeated, leaning in slightly. She nodded, her small hands stroking the bear's worn fur. "It was lonely, like me." For a moment, Elon didn't know what to say. The logical part of his mind wanted to dismiss her words as a child's imagination. But the rest of him, the father who had spent 3 years haunted by Clara's absence, couldn't shake the weight of them. "Anna," he said carefully, "you said something about a bad lady. Who is she?" Anna froze, her entire body tensing. She shook her head violently. "I can't," she whispered. "She'll find me. She'll be mad. You're safe now," Elon said firmly, though he wasn't sure how much he believed it himself. "No one's going to hurt you. I promise." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "She's mean," Anna murmured. "She takes kids, locks them up, and if they're bad," her voice broke, and she pressed her face into the bear again. Elon's breath hitched. His mind was spinning, 1,000 questions and possibilities colliding at once. Who was this woman? Could she be connected to Clara's disappearance? And why, of all things, did this girl have Clara's bear? "Anna," he said gently, "do you know where this lady is now?" Anna didn't respond. Her small body trembled, and her grip on the bear tightened further. "It's okay," he said quickly, backing off. "You don't have to say anything right now, but I'm going to make sure you're safe. I promise." She looked at him then, her tear-streaked face filled with something that almost resembled hope. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Come on," Elon said softly, holding out his hand. "Let's get you something to eat. You look like you could use it." Anna hesitated, glancing at his outstretched hand and then back at the trees. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded and stood, still clutching the bear. As they walked toward his car, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was the beginning of something bigger. The pieces didn't fit yet, but he was determined to make them. Whoever this girl was, she held a thread, however small, that might lead him back to Clara. And for the first time in years, that thought filled him with both hope and dread. The cafe was quiet, a small corner establishment with warm lighting and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Elon guided Anna to a table near the window, her bare feet shuffling against the tiled floor. She clutched the teddy bear tightly, her wide eyes darting nervously around the room as though she expected danger to spring from the shadows. "Sit here," Elon said gently, pulling out a chair for her. She climbed into the seat, clutching the bear as though it might disappear if she let go. Elon signaled to the waitress, a kind-faced woman with a pen tucked behind her ear, who approached with a smile. "What can I get for you?" she asked, her gaze softening as it landed on Anna. "A hot chocolate," Elon said, "and a sandwich. Whatever you have that's kid-friendly." The waitress nodded, her smile widening. Coming right up, Anna's small hands fidgeted with the bear's bow as she glanced nervously at Elon. He gave her a reassuring smile, though his mind was racing. He couldn't stop staring at the bear. Every detail, the frayed edges, the slight tear near its left ear, the faded fabric, confirmed what he already knew. It wasn't just similar to Clara's bear. It was Clara's bear. So, he began carefully, trying to keep his tone light. "You said you found the bear in a room. Do you remember where that was?" Anna didn't answer immediately. She stared at the table, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the surface. "It was dark," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "And cold. The room was locked. I wasn't supposed to go in there." Elon leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Why not?" "Because the bad lady said so," Anna replied, shrinking into her seat. She said it was her special room, and nobody could touch anything inside. But she hesitated, glancing at the bear in her lap. "I heard it. It was crying. It wanted me to take it." Elon's throat tightened. Her words were strange, almost surreal, but he didn't dismiss them. He'd learned long ago that children often describe trauma in ways adults struggle to understand. "Do you remember anything else about the room?" he pressed gently. Anna shook her head. "It smelled bad, like old things. And it was so quiet. I didn't like it." The waitress returned then, placing a steaming mug of hot chocolate and a plate with a grilled cheese sandwich in front of Anna. The smell seemed to jolt her back to the present. She grabbed the sandwich with both hands, devouring it as though she hadn't eaten in days. Elon watched her, a mixture of concern and determination tightening his chest. As she ate, his eyes drifted back to the bear. Something caught his attention, a faint glint on the underside of the fabric. He leaned forward, squinting to see it more clearly. "Anna," he said softly, "may I see the bear for a moment?" She froze, her eyes narrowing. "No, it's okay," Elon reassured her quickly. "I'm not going to take it away. I think there's something on it. Something important." Anna hesitated, clutching the bear tightly. Then, slowly, she held it out to him. Her hands trembled as she relinquished it, her expression filled with mistrust. Elon turned the bear over carefully, his fingers running along its underside. There, near the hem of the fabric, he saw it, a small, faded tag. The stitching was worn, the letters almost illegible, but as he brought it closer, his breath caught. CM Clara Musk. He stared at the initials, his mind spinning. There was no mistaking it now. This was Clara's bear. Somehow, impossibly, it had found its way into Anna's hands. "How did you get this?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I told you," Anna said, her eyes wide with fear. "I found it in the bad lady's room." Elon leaned back in his chair, the weight of her words sinking in. Whoever this bad lady was, she had Clara's bear. That meant she might have Clara, or at least know what happened to her. "Anna," he said gently, returning the bear to her. "I believe you, and I'm going to help you, but I need to know more. Can you tell me about the bad lady? What does she look like?" Anna stared at him, her lower lip quivering. "She's tall," she said finally, "with black hair, and her eyes are mean." Elon nodded, committing every detail to memory. "And where is she now? Do you know?" Anna shook her head. "I ran away. I don't want to go back." "You don't have to," Elon said firmly. "You're safe now. I promise." Anna looked at him, her expression filled with a fragile hope. She sipped her hot chocolate, her small hands wrapped around the mug. For the first time since he'd seen her in the park, she seemed to relax, if only a little. Elon, however, couldn't relax. Not yet. The initials on the bear had ignited something in him, a flicker of hope and dread all at once. Whoever this bad lady was, she was the closest link to Clara he'd had in 3 years. And he wasn't going to stop until he found her. The drive back to the mansion was enveloped in a fragile silence, punctuated only by the faint hum of the car's engine. Elon glanced at Anna from time to time. She sat motionless in the passenger seat, clutching the teddy bear so tightly he could see her knuckles whitening. Her eyes darted nervously to the window, watching the world pass by with a mixture of awe and fear. "You're safe," he said gently, breaking the quiet. Anna didn't respond, her small body rigid against the seat. Elon wanted to say more, to comfort her, but the words wouldn't come. His mind was already consumed by the implications of her story. And that bear, Clara's bear, every glance had it sent a sharp pang through his chest. When they pulled into the mansion's long, winding driveway, Anna sat up slightly, her expression turning from apprehension to wonder. The gates swung open, revealing the sleek, modern facade of Elon's home, its towering glass windows glinting in the fading sunlight. Anna hesitated as Elon opened her door, looking up at the house with wide eyes. "This is your house," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "It is," Elon replied, offering a small smile. "And it's your safe place now. Come on." She followed him reluctantly, her bare feet padding softly on the stone path. Once inside, her steps faltered. The mansion's vastness seemed to swallow her whole. The high ceilings, gleaming floors, and minimalist design left her looking both mesmerized and overwhelmed. She clung to the bear like it was her shield. "Are you hungry?" Elon asked, leading her toward the kitchen. She nodded faintly, but didn't speak. He opened the fridge, pulling out a container of fresh strawberries and a loaf of bread. Within minutes, he had made her a peanut butter sandwich and set it in front of her, along with a glass of milk. "You can eat as much as you want," he said, sitting across from her. Anna stared at the food for a moment before taking a tentative bite. Once she started, she ate hungrily, her small hands working quickly to finish the sandwich. Elon watched her in silence, his mind racing with questions. Where had she come from? How did she end up with the bear? And most pressing of all, could this lead him back to Clara? When Anna had finished, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Anna," he said carefully, "I need to ask you some things. I know it might be hard, but I promise I'll listen, and I won't let anyone hurt you." She tensed, her gaze dropping to the table. Her fingers fiddled with the bow on the bear's neck, twisting it nervously. "You said you ran away," Elon began. "Can you tell me about where you were before? Who was taking care of you?" Anna didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft he had to strain to hear it. "It wasn't a nice place," she murmured. Elon nodded, keeping his tone gentle. "Can you tell me more? What kind of place was it?" "It was a house," she said. "A big, dark house. There were other kids there too. We weren't allowed to leave. Elon's chest tightened. He leaned forward slightly, his pulse quickening. Other kids. Anna nodded, her expression darkening. We had to stay in our rooms most of the time. The bad lady said we couldn't go outside. She locked the doors. Sometimes, we didn't get food if we didn't do what she said. Elon clenched his fists under the table, forcing himself to remain calm. And the bad lady, he said, his voice steady. What does she look like? Anna hesitated, then whispered she was tall, with black hair, and she had these eyes like she was always angry. Elon's jaw tightened. Did she ever hurt you? Anna didn't answer, her silence speaking volumes. She pressed her face into the bear, her small shoulders trembling. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, Elon said quickly. But I want you to know that you're safe here. She can't hurt you anymore. Anna peeked up at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I don't want to go back, she whispered. You won't, Elon promised. I'll make sure of that. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elon shifted gears, pointing to the bear in her arms. You said you found that in the bad lady's house, right? Anna nodded. In a locked room, she said. She said it was her special room, and no one could go in there. But one day, I sneaked in. I saw it on a shelf. It looked lonely. Lonely. Elon repeated, his throat tightening. Anna nodded again, stroking the bear's worn fur. I could feel it. It needed me to take it. Elon swallowed hard, his mind spinning. The way she spoke about the bear was strange, but there was an unmistakable sincerity in her voice. Do you remember anything else about the room? He asked. It smelled bad, Anna said, wrinkling her nose. Like old stuff. And it was really quiet. Too quiet. Elon leaned back in his chair, his thoughts racing. Whoever this bad lady was, she had Clara's bear. That alone was enough to tie her to Clara's disappearance. Anna, he said gently, thank you for telling me. I know it's hard, but it's really important. You're very brave. Anna looked at him, her small face softening. For the first time, she seemed to relax slightly. Why are you helping me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon hesitated, then said, because I think you can help me too. Anna tilted her head, confused. That bear, Elon continued, his voice thick with emotion. It belonged to my daughter. She disappeared a long time ago, and I've been trying to find her ever since. Anna's eyes widened, her small hands gripping the bear tightly. The bad lady. She might know, she said hesitantly. Elon nodded. That's what I think too, and I'm going to find her. But first, I need to make sure you're safe. Anna didn't respond, but the look in her eyes told him she understood. That night, after tucking Anna into one of the guest rooms, Elon sat in his study, the bear resting on his desk. He dialed the number of a trusted private investigator, his voice steady as he explained everything. I need you to find out who this woman is, he said. Every detail. And fast. As he hung up, his gaze returned to the bear. For the first time in 3 years, he felt a spark of hope. It was fragile, tenuous, but was enough. The morning sunlight streamed through the towering windows of Elon's mansion, painting the sleek interiors in hues of gold and white. Elon sat at the head of the long dining table, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. Across from him, Anna poked at a plate of pancakes, her appetite much smaller now than it had been the day before. She looked out of place in the grand surroundings, her small frame dwarfed by the high-backed chair. The teddy bear rested in her lap, its worn fur a stark contrast to the polished surfaces around her. She hadn't let it go, not even while she slept. Did you sleep well? Elon asked gently, his voice breaking the stillness. Anna shrugged, her eyes darting away. It's too big here, she murmured. Too quiet. Elon's heart twisted at her words. You'll get used to it, he said. And you don't have to be scared. You're safe now. She gave a small nod, but didn't look convinced. Before he could say more, the soft chime of his phone interrupted them. Elon picked it up and saw a name he'd been waiting for. Trevor Bennett, his investigator. He stood, giving Anna a reassuring smile. "I'll be right back," he said, walking toward his study. Once inside, he closed the door and answered the call. "Trevor, tell me you found something." "More than I expected," Trevor replied, his voice clipped and professional. "The description you gave me, tall woman, black hair, strange behavior, it matches a known figure in child trafficking circles. Her name is Dolores Arlo. She's been on the radar for years, but always manages to slip through the cracks. She's dangerous, Elon. If Anna escaped from her, she's incredibly lucky." Elon's grip tightened on the phone. "What else do you know?" "She operates out of several locations, constantly moving to avoid detection. Her most recent base was an old property in Nevada. Law enforcement raided it a few months ago, but she was gone by the time they arrived. However, there's evidence that she kept children there, rooms with locks on the outside, surveillance equipment, you name it." Elon's jaw clenched. "And Clara, was there any sign of her?" Trevor hesitated. "There's no direct mention of Clara, but the bear, if it was in her possession, it's a lead. Dolores doesn't keep random items. Everything she has serves a purpose." Elon's stomach churned. He glanced at the bear, sitting on the desk beside him. "What about her current location? Do you know where she is?" "She's gone quiet," Trevor admitted. "But I'm following up on a few leads. One of her known associates was recently spotted in New Mexico. It's a long shot, but it's worth investigating." Elon exhaled sharply. "Do it, and keep me updated." "Will do," Trevor said. "But Elon, be careful. Dolores is ruthless. If she thinks someone's coming after her, she won't hesitate to retaliate." "I can handle it," Elon replied, his voice cold. "Just find her." He ended the call and stared at the bear, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Dolores Harlow. The name felt like a new weight pressing on his chest. But it was a name, a starting point, and after 3 years of dead ends, that was enough to ignite his determination. He returned to the dining room, where Anna was still nibbling on her pancakes. She looked up as he entered, her expression wary. "Anna," he said, sitting down across from her, "I've asked someone to help us find the bad lady. It might take some time, but I promise we're going to figure this out." Anna's eyes widened. "You're going to find her?" "Yes," Elon said firmly. "And when we do, she won't hurt anyone ever again." For the first time, Anna seemed to relax slightly. She took another bite of her pancake, though her grip on the bear remained tight. Elon leaned back in his chair, his mind already working on the next steps. He wasn't going to wait idly for Trevor's investigation to yield results. He had resources, vast ones, and he intended to use them. By the time the day ended, he had mobilized his own team of security experts, instructing them to dig into Dolores Harlow's network and connections. Every lead, every detail would be scrutinized. That evening, as Anna wandered the halls of the mansion, she stumbled upon Clara's room. The door was ajar, and the soft light from the hallway illuminated the pink rocket pattern blanket and the shelves filled with books and toys. Anna stepped inside cautiously, her bare feet making no sound on the carpet. She looked around, her small hands brushing over the desk and the bedspread. Something about the room felt familiar, though she couldn't explain why. When Elon found her there, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, the bear still in her lap. "This room," she said softly. "It feels like her." Elon's heart clenched. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room that had remained unchanged for 3 years. "She loved this room," he said quietly, sitting beside her. "She used to spend hours here, drawing, reading, playing. It was her favorite place in the world." Anna looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Do you think she remembers it?" Elon swallowed hard. "I hope so," he said. "I hope she remembers everything." Anna didn't respond, but she leaned against him slightly, her small frame trembling. He put a protective arm around her, vowing silently that he wouldn't stop until he uncovered the truth. "Somewhere out there," was the answer, and he wouldn't rest until he found it. Days turned into a whirlwind of activity as Elon's resources went into overdrive. His sprawling network of connections was put to work, digging into Dolores Harlow's trail. Every lead, every name, every scrap of information was meticulously analyzed. Despite the grim subject, the effort breathed a sense of purpose back into Elon, a fire he hadn't felt since Clara's disappearance. Trevor Bennett, the investigator, delivered updates daily. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but the picture they formed was harrowing. Elon, Trevor said over a secure video call late one evening, "We've confirmed Dolores Harlow's involvement in several child abduction cases across multiple states. Her operation is methodical, and she's careful to cover her tracks. But there's one thing she didn't account for: the bear." Elon's eyes narrowed. "What about it?" "DNA," Trevor said. "I had it tested. There's a partial match to Clara's DNA on that bear. It's old, but it's there. That bear was hers, no question." The confirmation hit Elon like a punch to the gut. He leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "And Dolores? Where is she?" "She's slippery, but I've got something," Trevor said. "One of her known associates, a man named Victor Ruiz, is still active. He's been spotted in New Mexico, using an abandoned ranch as a meeting point. Dolores might not be there, but he could have information." Elon nodded, his mind already racing ahead. "Send me everything you have on the location." "I'll handle it." Trevor hesitated. "Elon, I have to caution you. This isn't a boardroom negotiation. These people are dangerous. Let me coordinate with law enforcement." "There's no time." Elon cut him off. "Clara's out there, and every second counts. I'm not sitting around while red tape slows things down." Trevor sighed, but relented. "At least take security with you. You'll need backup." "I'll handle it," Elon said firmly. He ended the call before Trevor could argue further. Later that evening, Elon sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the bear resting on the nightstand. The confirmation of Clara's DNA on the bear felt like both a breakthrough and a wound reopened. He thought of Anna, asleep in the guest room down the hall. She was a child thrust into a nightmare, yet somehow she'd survived. Her resilience gave him hope. If Anna had made it out, maybe Clara could too. As if summoned by his thoughts, there was a soft knock on his door. "Come in," Elon said. Anna peeked inside, the bear clutched in her arms as always. "I couldn't sleep," she said quietly. Elon motioned for her to sit beside him. She climbed up onto the bed, her small frame dwarfed by the massive mattress. "Is it because of the bad lady?" he asked gently. Anna nodded, her gaze fixed on the bear. "I keep thinking she'll find me. She always finds people." "She won't find you here," Elon said firmly. "I promise." Anna looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "Do you really think Clara is alive?" The question caught him off guard. He hesitated, his voice faltering as he said, "I hope so." Anna's expression softened. "She's lucky to have a dad who's still looking for her," she said. Elon's chest tightened. "And you're lucky to be so brave," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've been through so much, but you're still here. That's incredible." She offered a small smile, the first genuine one he'd seen from her. The next morning, Elon received a call from Trevor. "The ranch in New Mexico. It's definitely connected to Dolores," Trevor said. "We've intercepted some communication suggesting it's a storage site for her operations." "What kind of storage?" Elon asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Documents, equipment, maybe even videos. If Dolores kept records of the children she took, they'd be there." Elon's breath caught. "I'm going there," he said immediately. "Elon, you can't just walk in there. It's likely under surveillance, and Victor Ruiz is dangerous." "I'm not going to walk in blindly," Elon snapped. "I'll bring a team, but I'm not waiting." Trevor sighed, but didn't argue further. "I'll send you the coordinates. Be careful." By noon, Elon's private security team was briefed and ready. They flew to New Mexico in one of Elon's jets, arriving near the abandoned ranch under cover of darkness. As the team prepared for the operation, Elon stood to the side, staring at the dark horizon. The weight of what they might find loomed over him. If this lead didn't pan out, it would be another dead end in a seemingly endless series of them. But if it did, if there was even a shred of information about Clara. Mr. Musk, one of the security officers, interrupted his thoughts. "We're ready to move." Elon nodded, steeling himself. This was it, the next step in a journey he'd vowed never to abandon. As they approached the ranch, the dilapidated building came into view, its silhouette barely visible against the moonlit sky. It was quiet, eerily so, and the tension in the air was palpable. "Secure the perimeter," the team leader ordered. "We go in on my mark." Elon stayed close, his heart pounding. He wasn't a soldier, but his determination outweighed his fear. If there was even a chance that Clara's trail led here, he wouldn't stop. The pieces of the puzzle were aligning, but what they revealed might be more horrifying than anything he'd imagined. The air around the ranch was cold and still, the kind of quiet that gnawed at the nerves. Elon stood behind a cluster of dried-out bushes, the glow from the handheld monitors carried by his team casting faint blue light over their faces. His security team, equipped with state-of-the-art equipment, moved like shadows in the darkness, scanning the perimeter for threats. Elon's heart thudded in his chest, the anticipation nearly unbearable. In all his years of calculated risks, launching rockets, pioneering new technologies, this was different. This wasn't about innovation or profit. This was personal. The team leader, a broad-shouldered man named Garrett, crouched beside him. "The house is quiet. No movement outside," he murmured. Elon nodded, his voice low. And inside, Garrett's partner, who monitored a thermal imaging device, shook his head. "Looks like 2 heat signatures, maybe 3. Small building, minimal activity. They're either unaware or waiting." Trevor's earlier warning echoed in Elon's mind. Dolores is ruthless. If they think you're coming after them, they won't hesitate to retaliate. Retaliation meant nothing to Elon now. His focus was singular, getting inside that house and finding answers. "We move in quietly," Garrett continued, addressing the team. "Non-lethal unless provoked. If Victor Ruiz is in there, we need him alive to get any useful information." Everyone clears. The team nodded in unison, and Elon followed their movements as they approached the ranch. The building was decrepit, its wooden walls warped from years of neglect. A faint flicker of light could be seen through one of the small windows. Inside the ranch, the air was thick with the smell of damp wood and mildew. The team moved silently, their weapons drawn. Elon stayed close to Garrett, his pulse pounding as they entered what appeared to be a living room. The space was cluttered with mismatched furniture, stained rugs, and piles of paper. A rusted metal filing cabinet stood in one corner, its drawers partially open. But the real focal point was the man sitting in a torn armchair near the back of the room. Victor Ruiz. He was gaunt, his skin weathered from years of hard living. His greasy hair hung in limp strands over his forehead, and his eyes darted toward the intruders with a mix of anger and fear. "What the hell is this?" he barked, starting to rise. "Stay where you are," Garrett ordered, his weapon trained on Ruiz. Ruiz froze, his hands slowly raising in mock surrender. "You've got the wrong guy. I don't know what you're looking for. We'll decide that," Garrett replied. "You're Victor Ruiz, correct?" Ruiz's mouth tightened. "Depends who's asking." Elon stepped forward, his voice cold and steady. "I am." Ruiz squinted at him, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition. "Elon Musk," he muttered, a twisted grin forming on his lips. "What's a billionaire doing in a dump like this? You lose one of your fancy toys." Elon ignored the taunt, his gaze unwavering. "Where's Dolores Harlow?" Ruiz laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Dolores, that crazy witch. Haven't seen her in months." Garrett pressed closer, his weapon still aimed. "We're not here to play games." "Where is she?" Ruiz's grin faded. "I told you I don't know. She moves around. Always has. And even if I did know, I wouldn't tell you. You don't want to cross her, man." Elon's patience snapped. He grabbed a nearby chair and slammed it down, the noise echoing through the room. Ruiz flinched, his bravado faltering. "She took my daughter," Elon said, his voice low and menacing. And I'm not leaving here until I have answers. Ruiz hesitated, his eyes flicking nervously to Garrett's weapon. Look, he said, his tone shifting to one of desperation. I don't know where she is right now, but she's got places. Lots of them. She's always setting up new ones. What about this one? Garrett demanded. What's it used for? Storage, Ruiz admitted. Records, old files. She's paranoid about keeping track of everything. Says it's her insurance. Elon's pulse quickened. Where are the records? Ruiz gestured toward the back of the house. There's a basement, but good luck getting in. She rigged it. Locks, alarms, you name it. She doesn't trust anyone, not even me. Garrett motioned for 2 team members to secure Ruiz while the rest of them moved toward the basement. Elon followed closely, his determination overriding his fear. The basement door was heavy, reinforced with steel. Garrett's team worked quickly to bypass the locks, their tools humming softly in the tense silence. When the door finally creaked open, a rush of cold air greeted them. The basement was dimly lit, its walls lined with shelves crammed with binders, boxes, and hard drives. Elon's breath caught as he stepped inside. This wasn't just storage, it was an archive. Garrett handed him a flashlight. Start looking. Anything with names, photos, or locations. Elon moved to one of the shelves, his hands trembling as he rifled through the files. Most of the documents were coded or vague, but occasional details stood out. Birth dates, initials, cryptic notes. Over here, one of the team members called, holding up a folder. Looks like a list of kids. Elon rushed over, his heart pounding. The folder contained pages of names, most of them crossed out. But as he flipped through, one name made him freeze. Elon Musk. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the name. Beside it was a date, 3 years ago, and a note that read, transferred to primary location. Elon, Garrett said, his voice urgent, we need to move. Someone could be on their way here. Elon nodded, clutching the folder tightly. He cast one last glance around the room before following the team out. As they emerged into the night, Elon felt a mix of emotions, hope, fear, and a simmering anger. He had a lead now, a tangible connection to Clara, and he wasn't going to stop until he found her. The abandoned hideout loomed on the outskirts of a forgotten desert town, a crumbling structure surrounded by jagged rocks and stretches of barren sand. The information gleaned from Victor Ruiz's files had led Elon and his team here, a suspected primary base of operations for Dolores Harlow. The air was thick with tension as Elon's security team prepared for the raid. Garrett stood beside him, reviewing the plan one last time. We go in fast and quiet, Garrett said, his voice steady. Our goal is to secure the building, identify any hostages, and apprehend Harlow if she's here. You stay with me at all times, understood? Elon nodded, his jaw tight. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face betrayed no fear. What if she's not here? Elon asked, his voice low. Then we secure whatever intel we can, Garrett replied. But let's focus on the task at hand. The team moved in under the cover of darkness, their footsteps muffled by the dry, dusty ground. The building was larger than it had seemed from the outside, a maze of interconnected rooms and hallways, its windows boarded up. Faint light seeped through the cracks, casting eerie shadows. Garrett's team breached the main door swiftly, their movements precise and silent. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of mildew and something faintly metallic. The first room was empty, discarded furniture and scattered papers the only signs of life. As they moved deeper into the building, the tension grew. The faint sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. Garrett raised his fist, signaling the team to stop. Elon held his breath, his eyes darting toward the source of the sound. A figure emerged from a side corridor, a wiry man with a rifle slung over his shoulder. Before he could react, Garrett's team subdued him, their movements swift and decisive. Where's Dolores Harlow? Garrett demanded, his voice a sharp whisper. The man sneered but said nothing. One of the team members restrained him as the others moved forward. They reached the heart of the building, a large, dimly lit room with rows of makeshift cots. Children's belongings were scattered across the floor: shoes, toys, a few tattered books. Elon's chest tightened at the sight. "Clear the area," Garrett ordered. "Look for any signs of hostages." As the team fanned out, Elon's gaze fell on a small figure huddled in the corner of the room. A girl, no older than 10, sat clutching her knees to her chest. Her hair was tangled, and her face was streaked with dirt. Elon's breath caught. For a moment, he thought it might be Clara. He rushed forward, kneeling in front of her. "Hey," he said gently, his voice trembling. "It's okay. You're safe now." The girl looked up, her wide, tear-filled eyes locking onto his. "She'll come back," she whispered. "She always comes back." Elon's heart sank. "Who?" "Dolores." The girl nodded, her small frame trembling. "She's in the basement. That's where she keeps the others." Elon stood, his determination hardening. "Garrett, we need to find that basement." The basement door was hidden behind a stack of crates. Garrett's team forced it open, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The air grew colder as they moved downward, the faint hum of machinery growing louder with each step. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a dimly lit chamber filled with locked cages. Inside were several children, their eyes wide with fear as they huddled together. "Secure them and call for backup," Garrett ordered. Elon's gaze swept the room, his heart pounding. Clara wasn't among them. His stomach churned as he turned toward another door at the far end of the chamber. "She's behind there," one of the children whispered. Elon didn't wait. He pushed past Garrett and threw the door open. Inside, he found Dolores Arlo. She was tall and imposing, her sharp features illuminated by the glow of a single overhead bulb. Her dark eyes locked onto Elon, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Well, she drawled. "Elon Musk, gracing us with his presence. To what do I owe the honors? Where is my daughter?" Elon demanded, his voice shaking with anger. Dolores laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You think I keep track of every little brat that comes through here? You're wasting your time." Elon stepped closer, his fists clenched. "I'm not leaving without answers. Where is Clara?" Dolores's smile faded, replaced by a calculating expression. "Even if I knew, why would I tell you?" Before she could say more, Garrett's team entered, their weapons trained on her. "Game's over, Dolores," Garrett said. "You're coming with us." Dolores raised her hands, her expression smug. "You think this ends with me? You're more naive than I thought." As the team restrained her, Elon's gaze swept the room. A wall of shelves caught his attention, filled with folders and photographs. He rushed over, rifling through the files until he found what he was looking for: a photo of Clara, her wide smile frozen in time. Beneath the photo was a single word: relocated. Elon's stomach dropped. "Where?" he muttered, flipping through the file desperately. Dolores smirked as she was led away. "Good luck," she called over her shoulder. Elon's hands trembled as he clutched the file. He wasn't done, not yet. Clara was still out there, and he was closer than ever to finding her. The journey back to Elon's mansion was silent, the hum of the jet engines the only sound breaking the tension. Garrett sat across from Elon, who hadn't spoken a word since they left the ranch. The photo of Clara and the word relocated sat in his lap, wrinkled from the tight grip of his hands. Dolores Harlow had been apprehended, her operation dismantled, and several children rescued. But Clara wasn't among them. She was still out there, somewhere, and the weight of uncertainty pressed on Elon like a vice. The thought of returning home, of walking back into that house without her, was unbearable. When they landed, Anna was waiting at the door, her small frame silhouetted by the glow of the mansion's lights. She clutched Clara's bear, her eyes wide with nervous anticipation. Elon forced a smile as he approached her, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Hi, Anna," he said gently. "Did you find her?" she asked, her voice trembling. Elon hesitated, his throat tightening. Not yet, he admitted. But we're closer. I promise, we're closer. Anna nodded, her face falling slightly. She reached out, handing him the bear. She'll need this, she said softly. When you find her. Elon's chest ached as he took the bear, holding it tightly. Thank you, he whispered. That night, Elon sat in Clara's room, the bear resting on her bed. The room felt heavier than ever, its untouched state a painful reminder of how long she'd been gone. He ran his hand over the photo he'd taken from Dolores's files, his eyes lingering on her smile. The faint sound of footsteps drew his attention. He turned to see Anna standing in the doorway, her face pale. Someone's outside, she whispered. Elon's heart skipped a beat. He stood quickly, moving to the window. A shadowy figure stood near the edge of the garden, illuminated faintly by the moonlight. Without a word, Elon grabbed his phone and alerted security. Garrett was on the grounds within minutes, his team sweeping the area. Elon stayed inside, his pulse racing as he watched from the window. His phone buzzed moments later with a message from Garrett. Found her. It's a child. She says her name is Clara. Elon's breath caught. He rushed outside, his heart pounding in his ears. Garrett was standing near the gate, holding a flashlight. Beside him was a small figure, a girl with tangled hair and a dirt-smudged face. Elon stopped a few feet away, his chest heaving. Clara, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide and filled with tears. She clutched the hem of her shirt tightly, her body trembling. Daddy, she said, her voice cracking. Elon's knees nearly buckled. He moved toward her slowly, afraid she might vanish if he moved too quickly. It's me, he said, his voice shaking. It's Daddy. Clara let out a sob and ran into his arms, burying her face in his chest. Elon held her tightly, his own tears falling freely as years of pain and longing melted away in an instant. I thought I'd never see you again, she cried, her small hands clutching his shirt. I never stopped looking for you, Elon whispered, his voice breaking. Not for a second. From the doorway, Anna watched the scene unfold, tears streaming down her cheeks. She clutched the teddy bear, her heart swelling with relief. Slowly, she stepped forward, holding the bear out toward Clara. This is yours, she said quietly. Clara looked at the bear, her eyes lighting up with recognition. She reached out, taking it in her arms and hugging it tightly. Captain Bear, she murmured, her voice filled with emotion. Elon knelt beside her, his hands on her shoulders. You're home now, he said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. You're safe. And I'm never letting you go again. Clara looked up at him, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes shining with hope. I knew you'd find me, she said softly. Elon smiled, pulling her into his arms once more. For the first time in years, the emptiness in his heart began to heal. The mansion was alive with quiet activity that night. Clara sat curled on the couch in the living room, the teddy bear never leaving her grip. Anna sat beside her, speaking softly, her words meant to comfort. Elon watched them from the kitchen, his heart swelling with emotions he couldn't name. Relief, joy, and a lingering ache for all the time that had been lost. Garrett entered, his expression grave but respectful. The kids we rescued are being taken care of, he said. They're safe now. The authorities are handling the logistics. Elon nodded, his gaze fixed on Clara. And Dolores. She's locked down, Garrett replied, but she's not talking. If we want more information about where Clara's been or what she's been through, it's going to take time. Elon's jaw tightened. She'll talk, he said, his voice cold. One way or another. Garrett hesitated. What about Clara? She's been through a lot. She'll need help. Specialists, therapy. I can make some calls if you need recommendations. Elon sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. Thank you, Garrett. I'll take care of it. Just make sure Dolores doesn't go anywhere. Garrett nodded and left. Elon turned back to the living room. Anna was now holding Clara's hand, their fingers intertwined as they whispered to each other. Clara's face, though still pale and gaunt, held a flicker of light, a spark of hope. That night, Elon sat with Clara in her room, which had remained untouched since her disappearance. The moment she stepped inside, her small gasp filled the air. "It's the same," she whispered, her eyes scanning the walls, the bed, the bookshelf. She walked to the desk, her fingers brushing over the worn surface. "You didn't change anything." Elon knelt beside her. "I couldn't," he said. "I couldn't bring myself to." Clara hugged the teddy bear tightly, her lip trembling. "I thought I'd never come back," she said softly. Elon's throat tightened. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're home now," he said, "and you're never going to have to leave again." Clara turned to him, her eyes brimming with tears. "I missed you, Daddy," she said. "I missed you too," Elon replied, his voice breaking. More than anything in the world, the following days were a flurry of activity as Elon began the process of rebuilding Clara's life. He brought in top child psychologists and trauma specialists, ensuring she had the support she needed. He worked tirelessly to make the mansion feel like a home again, a place of safety and comfort for both Clara and Anna. Anna, meanwhile, had become an integral part of their lives. She and Clara bonded quickly, their shared experiences creating a connection that no one else could fully understand. Clara often clung to Anna, seeking her out for reassurance when the memories became too overwhelming. Elon noticed the way Anna looked out for Clara, the gentle way she spoke to her, the way she held her hand during the toughest moments. It was as if Anna had found a purpose in protecting her. One evening, as the girls played together in the garden, Elon sat on the porch, watching them. Marianne joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "You've been quiet," she said, sitting beside him. Elon sighed. "I'm just taking all in," he said. "For 3 years, I thought I'd never see her again. And now she's here, playing in that garden like nothing ever happened." Marianne smiled gently. "She's strong, just like her father." Elon shook his head. "I don't feel strong," he admitted. "Every time I look at her, I think about what she went through, what I couldn't protect her from." "You can't change the past," Marianne said, "but you can be here for her now. That's what matters." Elon nodded, his gaze fixed on Clara and Anna as they laughed together. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace. That night, Clara climbed into bed with her teddy bear, her face serene for the first time since her return. Anna sat on the edge of the bed, holding Clara's hand. "Do you think the bad dreams will go away?" Clara asked softly. "They will," Anna said firmly. "You just have to remember that you're safe now. And you'll stay?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. Anna smiled. "Of course. We're family now." Elon stood in the doorway, his chest tightening at the sight. He stepped inside and kissed Clara's forehead. "Good night, sweetheart," he said. "Good night, Daddy," Clara whispered, her eyes fluttering closed. Elon turned off the light and stood for a moment, watching his daughters, because that's what Anna had become to him. His family was whole again, and he would do whatever it took to keep them safe. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the mansion, casting warm light over the garden where Clara and Anna played together. Their laughter echoed across the grounds, a sound that had been missing for too long. Elon watched from the balcony, a quiet smile on his face. It was a sound he had feared he might never hear again, a sound that now brought him peace. The days since Clara's return had been filled with challenges, but also healing. Clara was slowly opening up about her time away, guided by the team of specialists Elon had brought in. Each story she shared cut deep, but it also strengthened his resolve. He wasn't just a father trying to repair the pieces of his own family anymore. He was determined to help others who were still lost in the darkness. Anna, too, had become a cornerstone of their lives. She was no longer the timid, frightened child Elon had found in the park. She had blossomed into a caring, protective older sister to Clara, offering her strength and comfort in the moments when nightmares resurfaced. Weeks later, Elon stood before a crowd of journalists and activists, a microphone in his hand. The press conference had been called hastily, but the room was packed. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "For the past 3 years, I've lived every parent's worst nightmare. My daughter, Clara, was taken from me, and I spent every day wondering if I would ever see her again. Thanks to the courage of another child and the tireless efforts of those who refuse to give up, Clara is home. But many children are not." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "Today, I'm announcing the launch of the Clara Initiative, a foundation dedicated to finding and rescuing missing children. This is more than a cause. It's a commitment. No parent should have to face what I did, and no child should be left in the dark, waiting for someone to find them." The room erupted into applause, but Elon barely noticed. His focus was on the mission ahead. That evening, back at the mansion, Elon joined Clara and Anna in the garden. The girls were playing with a small rocket model he had designed for them, their laughter filling the air. "Can we launch it, Daddy?" Clara asked excitedly, holding up the model. "Not yet," Elon said with a smile. "We need to make sure it's ready first. Rockets are serious business, you know." Clara giggled, her eyes shining with happiness. Anna joined in, her own smile wide and unguarded. Elon sat back on the grass, watching them. The first time in years, he felt a sense of completeness. His family wasn't just restored, it had grown. Anna was as much his daughter now as Clara was, and their bond was unshakable. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Elon felt a quiet contentment settle over him. The journey to this moment had been harrowing, but it had also changed him. It had reminded him of what truly mattered. "Daddy," Clara said, sitting beside him and leaning against his shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart. Are we going to find the other kids, too?" she asked, her voice soft. Elon nodded, wrapping an arm around her. "We are," he said, "and we're going to bring them home. Just like we brought you home." Clara smiled, her eyes closing as she rested against him. Anna joined them, leaning against Elon's other side. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Elon felt a sense of hope he hadn't known in years. His family was together, and they were moving forward. And as he looked up at the vast expanse above, he knew that this, more than anything else, was his greatest achievement.